Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you'd like to submit a story, feel free to do so in the comments down below or send it to my email. Alright, let's dive into today's story. You know that feeling when you're totally sure about someone, like they've got their whole life together and you secretly envy them? That's how I felt about my neighbor, Dr. Adrian Cole. Adrian was bald, with these unsettling pale blue eyes that could pin you in place if he looked at you too long. The guy oozed charisma. He was smart, rich, and a doctor on top of it. People adored him. Even the way he walked, confident, polite, always smiling, made it impossible to suspect anything dark about him. But Adrian wasn't just a doctor. In our small town, he was a symbol of success. He donated to local charities, sponsored school events, and hosted neighborhood barbecues every summer. He never hesitated to help anyone in need. His wife, Mara, was the perfect match for him. Beautiful, gracious, kind. She had this shiny, expensive wedding ring, a big diamond surrounded by tiny emeralds that always caught the light when she waved at you from across the street. Their kids, Noah and Lily, were polite and well-behaved, the kind of kids you'd use as examples when telling your own children how to act. Then, a few weeks ago, everything changed. Mara and the kids vanished. No goodbye, no luggage, no late-night argument heard through the walls. Just gone, like smoke in the wind. At first, everyone assumed they'd gone on a trip or there was some kind of family emergency. But days turned into weeks, and the whispering started. Had she left him? Was their perfect life just a show? Was there trouble behind that flawless front door? People talked, but no one could imagine Adrian doing anything wrong. Adrian played the grieving husband and father like a professional actor. He went on local news, eyes glossy with tears, pleading for his family to come home. "Mara, if you can see this, please, I love you. Please come back," he said, voice cracking at all the right moments. The town ate it up. But when the cameras weren't on him, he was different. I'd see him mowing the lawn with his earbuds in, smiling at neighbors, waving like nothing had happened. I'd catch him at the mailbox making jokes, chatting about sports, the weather, anything but his missing family. It was off. I tried to tell myself he was just good at hiding pain. Not everyone wears their emotions on their sleeves. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. But my gut wouldn't shut up. And as it turned out, my gut was right. It started with my house falling apart. One night, I had just settled in to watch a movie when I heard this horrible gurgling noise from the pipes. Before I could even get up, water exploded out of the kitchen sink, blasting the faucet like a busted fire hydrant. I sprinted to the basement and shut off the main valve, but it was too late. Water flooded the downstairs. The floors were soaked, water seeping into the walls, sneaking into electrical outlets. The air smelled like wet drywall and metal. I called an emergency plumber, but they told me it would take days to fix. The fans, the dehumidifiers, the mess, it made the downstairs unlivable. My bedroom upstairs was technically fine, but the damp smell and constant noise from the equipment made it impossible to sleep. That's when Adrian appeared. He caught me outside as I was dragging a heavy trash bag of clothes to my car. "What's going on?" he asked, leaning casually on the fence between our yards. "Plumbing disaster," I said, gesturing at the chaos inside. "I'll probably have to crash at a hotel for a few days." "Nonsense," he said, with that easy smile. Stay with me. I've got plenty of space. Besides, I wouldn't want you sleeping in a soggy house." I hesitated. The whole missing family thing clung to the back of my mind like a shadow. "Are you sure?" I asked. "I don't want to impose." "It's no trouble at all," he assured me. "Honestly, you'd be doing me a favor. The house feels too empty these days." That night, I packed a bag and headed over to Adrian's house. His house was everything you'd expect from a successful doctor. High ceilings, sleek furniture, spotless floors. Not a toy, sock, or random object out of place. Every room looked like it had been staged for a magazine shoot. But there was something off, something clinical. It smelled faintly like strong cleaning chemicals. Not just the usual "I mopped earlier" smell. More like someone had been scrubbing and bleaching every inch of the place over and over. "You're welcome to sleep in the attic," he said, leading me up the stairs. "It's the only room I've got set up right now. I don't use it much, but it's cozy." The attic was surprisingly livable. A bed with fresh sheets, a small desk, a mini fridge humming softly, shelves lined with old books and boxes. It had this slightly cluttered, comfortable feel, like someone had tried to make it homey. But the door was strange. It was a sliding door, heavy, with a thick metal lock bolted into it. Not a regular bedroom lock. A serious, keep something in or out kind of lock. I ran my fingers over the cold metal. "Why does the attic door lock like this?" I joked, trying to keep my tone light. Adrian shrugged. "Came with the house. Previous owner was paranoid, I guess." He laughed, but his eyes didn't quite match the smile. After showing me around, he headed downstairs. "I hope you're hungry," he called up. "I'm making a feast." I sat on the bed, taking in the room, trying to shake off the weird feeling gnawing at my spine. Maybe it was just the strangeness of staying in someone else's house. Maybe it was the lock. Maybe it was him. Either way, I pushed it aside and headed downstairs when he called me for dinner. The smell hit me halfway down the stairs, savory, rich, mouth-watering. When I walked into the dining room, I stopped in my tracks. The table was loaded with food, steaming bowls of soup, platters of roasted meat with a dark, glossy glaze, roasted vegetables, salads, bread. It looks like something out of a holiday commercial. "Wow," I said, taking a seat. "You really didn't have to go all out." "Cooking helps me cope," Adrian said, waving it off, setting down a dish. "Besides, it's nice to have company for dinner again." The soup was silky and fragrant, thick with herbs and spices. The meat practically melted in my mouth, tender, rich, with this deep, almost smoky flavor that made me want more with every bite. "This is incredible," I said between mouthfuls. "What kind of meat is this?" "Oh, just a mix of things," he said casually, taking a sip of wine. "Family recipes, handed down for generations." I didn't think twice. The food was too good to question. We talked as we ate, about work, the neighborhood, random stories from our lives. Adrian was a natural conversationalist, pulling me along from topic to topic, making me laugh. For a while I forgot all about his missing family, and the locked attic door, and the smell of bleach. "This is amazing," I said, raising my glass. "Thanks for sharing this with me, really." "The pleasure is all mine," he said, eyes gleaming in the soft light as he clinked his glass against mine. After dinner, I tried to help clean up, but he waved me away. He moved through the kitchen with the precision of a surgeon, hands working quickly, scrubbing every dish until it gleamed, every counter wiped down, every trace of dinner erased. I headed back up to the attic. The room felt cozy, but something was wrong beneath the surface. The bed was freshly made. The mini-fridge was stocked. Even the books on the shelves were arranged like they were meant to be seen, not used. It felt less like an unused attic and more like a room someone had prepared specifically for me. As I walked toward the bed, my foot caught on something. I stumbled, nearly falling, and looked down. A loose floorboard. I crouched, running my hand over it. It shifted under my touch just enough to feel wrong. "Weird," I muttered. Then I shrugged it off. Old houses creak, boards come loose. It happens. I changed into pajamas and slid into bed. The slanted ceiling gave the room a cabin-like vibe, but the silence was thick. Too thick. No pipes, no distant TV, not even the usual night noises of a house settling. Just silence, pressing in on me from every wall. I don't know when I finally fell asleep. Sometime in the night, I woke up. The room was pitch black. I grabbed my phone and checked the time. 3:12 a.m. That's when I heard it. A faint, rhythmic tapping. It came from below, through the floor. Steady, methodical, like someone lightly drumming their fingers on wood. Tap, 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 tap. I sat up, heart pounding, holding my breath. The sound stopped. I told myself it was nothing. Pipes, the house, my imagination, midnight paranoia. Eventually, I fell back into a restless sleep. The next morning, sunlight through the tiny attic window felt like a blessing. I chalked up the sounds to nerves and exhaustion. Adrian was already downstairs, sitting at the table with a cup of coffee and a crossword puzzle. "Sleep well?" he asked, not looking up. "Yeah," I lied. "The attic's great." He nodded. "Good. Let me know if you need anything." His politeness was so consistent it almost felt rehearsed. I spent most of the day out, just to get some distance from the house. That night, after another disturbingly pleasant dinner, I went back up to the attic. I was exhausted, but my mind wouldn't settle. The same floorboard caught my eye. This time, I didn't ignore it. I knelt down and pressed on the loose board. It lifted more easily than I expected, revealing a dark gap and a small, dust-covered box nestled inside. My pulse quickened as I pulled it out. The cardboard was worn and soft at the edges, like it had been opened many times before. Inside were VHS tapes, dozens of them, each one labeled in the same neat handwriting. "My beautiful family." The words sent a shiver down my spine. I stared at them for a long time, frozen, before finally turning to the old TV and VCR in the corner. My hands shook as I slid the first tape in and pressed play. The screen flickered with static before a clear image appeared. It was a home video. I knelt down and pressed on the loose board. It lifted more easily than I expected, revealing a dark gap and a small dust-covered box nestled inside. My pulse quickened as I pulled it out. The cardboard was worn and soft at the edges, like it had been opened many times before. Inside were VHS tapes, dozens of them, each one labeled in the same neat handwriting. "My beautiful family." The words sent a shiver down my spine. I stared at them for a long time, frozen, before finally turning to the old TV and VCR in the corner. My hands shook as I slid the first tape in and pressed play. The screen flickered with static, before a clear image appeared. It was a home video. Mara and the kids were sitting around the dining table, laughing, eating. The room looked bright, warm, normal. Noah threw a piece of bread at his sister, and she squealed. Mara scolded them playfully. Then the camera panned slowly. Adrian was behind it at first. Then he turned it toward himself, his pale blue eyes staring directly into the lens. "My beautiful family," he said softly. The scene cut. Now the room was darker. Same dining room, same table, but Mara was tied to a chair, hands bound behind her, her face streaked with tears. Her voice was hoarse as she begged, words tumbling over each other, broken and desperate. The camera didn't shake. Whoever held it knew exactly what they were doing. The frame was steady, centered on her. Then Adrian stepped into view. He moved slowly, almost calmly, as he set something down on the table next to her. The knife caught the light, a long, thin blade, too clean, too sharp. He said something to her, too quiet for me to make out. Then he started. I won't repeat every detail, but he cut into her like he'd done it before. There was nothing hurried or clumsy about it. His movements were precise. He placed one hand on her arm to steady it, then drew the blade along her skin. Her scream tore through the tiny attic, thin and distorted through the speakers. Blood welled up in a long, trembling line, then spilled over, running down to her fingers, dripping off her nails onto the floor. He kept going. The tape didn't cut. The camera didn't flinch. The sound of her ragged breathing, the soft, wet noises of the blade working through flesh, they built into a nightmare rhythm that made my stomach roll. At one point, he paused, looked straight into the camera, and smiled. Then he lifted something from the table, a piece of flesh, small, red, trembling slightly in his gloved fingers. He raised it to his mouth. My hand slammed on the stop button. The screen went black. My heart hammered so hard I thought I was going to pass out. I stumbled away from the TV, tripping over the rug, and collapsed in the opposite corner of the attic before I retched. The taste of dinner burned up my throat. I vomited until my body started to spasm, until there was nothing left but bitter acid. My hands pressed into the floor, fingers trembling, sweat cold on my neck. Something glinted in the mess. I froze. There, half smeared with bile, was a ring. I knew that ring. I'd seen it catch the sunlight 1,000 times when Mara waved from their porch. A large, brilliant diamond in the center, surrounded by a halo of tiny emeralds. The exact same design. The exact same ring. Mara's wedding ring. If this was her ring, then what had I just eaten? My throat closed. I couldn't even scream. The room spun as my mind tried to reject the answer forming in front of me. I staggered back toward the bed, legs shaking, grabbing the frame to keep from falling. My body felt hollow and heavy at the same time. I had to get out. Before I could move, I heard it. Footsteps on the stairs. Slow, heavy, deliberate. They stopped just outside the attic door. "You okay up there?" Adrian's voice drifted through the wood, calm and casual. the same voice he'd used over dinner when he'd offered me. My eyes flew to the TV. The tape was still out of its box on the floor. The others were scattered beside it, the hidden compartment wide open. The ring glittered dully in the puddle in the corner. Panic jolted through me. I lunged for the TV and hit the power button with trembling fingers, plunging the screen into darkness. I didn't have time to clean up the tapes. My brain screamed at me to put everything back, but my body refused to respond. I slid the attic door shut and locked it, then pressed my weight against it, trying to steady my breathing. "Yeah?" I called out, voice cracking. "Just tired." There was a pause, long enough for fear to wrap itself around my ribs and squeeze. Then the footsteps retreated. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. When the operator answered, words tumbled out in a frantic mess. "Please, send someone. My neighbor, he's done something terrible. I'm in his attic. There are tapes. He hurt his family. He's dangerous. Please, please hurry." "Stay where you are," the operator said firmly. "Officers are on their way. Can you secure yourself?" I stared at the lock. It suddenly felt extremely flimsy. "I'll try," I whispered. Every second stretched. The house creaked and groaned, each sound amplified in the suffocating silence. My mind spiraled. What if he knew? What if he'd heard the tape? What if he was just waiting at the bottom of the stairs? Then I heard it again. Footsteps. Closer this time. Faster. They stopped right outside. "You've been snooping," Adrian said quietly. His voice was different now. The warmth was gone, peeled away, leaving something flat and cold underneath. The door rattled violently. The whole frame shook as he shoved against it. "Open the door," he said. No charm, no smile, just a command. I stumbled back, my breath coming in sharp, broken gasps. A moment later, something thin and gleaming stabbed through the gap between the door and the frame, a knife blade. It scraped against the metal lock, sparks flaring for a second in the dim light. "Adrian, stop!" I yelled, my voice cracking. The lock twisted under the force. The wood around it splintered. Each impact was like a gunshot in the tiny room. With a deafening crack, the lock snapped. The door flew open, slamming into the wall. Adrian stood in the doorway. His pale blue eyes, once distant and kind, now burned with wild intensity. His face was tight, lips stretched into something that wasn't quite a smile. In his right hand, he held the knife. The blade was long and thin, stained with something dark and dried along the handle. Old reddish-brown smears sunk into the grooves. "So," he said, softly, stepping inside. "You figured it out." He scanned the room, the tapes on the floor, the open box, the lifted floorboard, the ring in the corner. "Doesn't matter now," he added. He lunged. I threw myself to the side, the knife slicing the air where my chest had been a second earlier. I grabbed the first thing my hand landed on, a heavy desk lamp, and swung it as hard as I could. The base of the lamp smashed into his shoulder with a dull thud. He staggered back, teeth clenched, but he didn't go down. He came at me again. We collided, crashing to the floor. The knife pressed against my throat, cold and unyielding. My arm shook as I fought to keep it away, muscles straining, fingers numb around his wrist. His face was only inches from mine, eyes wide and bright. "What was the food like?" he hissed, breath hot and sour. "Did you enjoy it?" The words punched the air out of my lungs. I could almost taste the dinner again, thick and heavy on my tongue. He pushed harder. The blade bit into my skin just enough to sting, a thin bead of warmth sliding along my neck. I twisted my body, kicking out with my knee, catching him in the ribs. He grunted, his grip loosening, just enough for the knife to slip from his fingers. It clattered across the floor between us. We both went for it. My hand brushed the handle, his fingers slammed down on mine, crushing them against the wood. Pain shot up my arm. Somewhere in the distance, growing louder, I heard sirens. Adrian pinned me down again, his weight heavy on my chest. He managed to grab the knife and brought it back up, raising it high. The sirens wailed closer. Tires screeched outside. The attic door exploded inward again, this time from the other side. "Drop the knife!" a voice roared. Uniforms filled the doorway, guns drawn, eyes locked on Adrian. But Adrian didn't move away. He didn't even flinch. He turned his head slowly, eyes blazing with something unhinged, and then lunged, this time at them. He swung the knife in wild, erratic arcs, a wordless scream tearing from his throat. The shots were deafening in the confined space. His body jerked violently, then collapsed onto the floor beside me. Blood spread quickly, a dark pool crawling across the wood, seeping into the cracks around the floorboards. For a moment, everything was quiet except for my ragged breathing. An officer knelt beside me. "You're safe now," he said. But I didn't feel safe. My eyes dragged over to Adrian's body. That's when I saw it. A handgun tucked neatly into his waistband. One of the officers noticed, too, and carefully pulled it out. "He had a gun," the officer muttered. "He could have used it on you at any time. Why didn't he?" The question hit me like ice water. Why didn't he? He had a gun. He could have ended it quickly. But he chose the knife, chose to get close, chose to push the blade against my skin, chose to talk, to savor it. He didn't just want me dead. He wanted me to feel every second of it. The next few hours blurred into flashing lights, questions, and the creeping cold of shock. They wrapped me in a blanket and led me downstairs. The house, once pristine and polished, now felt like what it always was, a crime scene. Adrian's body was carried out on a stretcher, a blood-soaked sheet covering him. Even with his face hidden, I could still see those eyes in my mind, the way they'd lit up when he asked how I'd liked the food. The police combed through the house. Later, a detective sat beside me on the curb, her face grim. "We found some disturbing things," she said softly. "Do you feel up to answering a few more questions?" I nodded, even though my whole body felt like it was made of glass. I told her everything: the tapes, the ring, the dinner, the attic, Adrian's attack. Every word felt like it weighed a ton. The news broke the next day. Respected doctor exposed as killer. Cannibal neighbor shocks small town. They didn't name me, but they didn't need to. Anyone close enough to know the streets could put the pieces together. What the police revealed was worse than anything I had imagined. In the room that had belonged to Adrian's daughter, they found hidden compartments under the bed and behind false panels in the walls. Inside were things that should never exist in a family home. Body parts, human remains, some wrapped like packages, some preserved in jars, some with clear teeth marks sunk into the flesh. A twisted collection of trophies. The remains were confirmed to be Mara and the kids. Tiny hands wrapped in cloth and tucked carefully away. Limbs stored in jars like specimens. Not just murder, obsession, control, cruelty on a level that was almost impossible to comprehend. Every new detail made my stomach twist. I couldn't stop thinking about his family recipes, about the taste of the meat, the tenderness, the flavor, and Mara's ring shining up at me from a pool of my own vomit. That meal had been her. Police told me to stay with family for a while. I didn't argue. My own house felt wrong now. Every creak sounded like footsteps. Every gurgle of the pipes made my skin crawl. Therapy helped. A little. Enough for me to function. But some nights I wake up choking on phantom tastes or hearing Adrian's voice right in my ear. What was the food like? Did you enjoy it? The town struggled to move on. Adrian had been a pillar of the community. People had trusted him with their lives, their children, their secrets. The betrayal cut deeper than anyone wanted to admit. A few days after the chaos died down, my phone rang. It was the detective. "There's something else," she said. "It's related to your home." My chest tightened. "What is it?" "Your plumbing," she said. "We found signs of deliberate tampering. Tools, hair, fingerprints. His fingerprints in your basement." For a moment, I couldn't speak. "It wasn't an accident," she continued. "He caused the flooding. He wanted to force you out of your house and into his." The room spun around me. Every moment replayed in my head with sickening clarity. The perfect timing. The way he just happened to be there when I was hauling my bag to the car. His insistence that I stay with him. The over-the-top hospitality. The freshly prepared attic. None of it was spontaneity. It was all part of his plan. "Why?" I whispered. The detective hesitated. "We can't say for sure, but given everything else?" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Adrian had watched me, studied me, chosen me, sabotaged my house, cooked for me, all to pull me into his web. I thought of Mara, of Noah, of Lily, of what was left of them in that house, of what he'd done to their bodies after he was done with their lives. Was I supposed to be next? Was I meant to be another family recipe? The thought made my skin crawl. The air felt too thin. I gripped the edge of the table and tried not to pass out. It's been months now. The repairs on my house are done, but it still doesn't feel like home. Sometimes when I'm cooking, I'll glance at the cutting board and feel a wave of nausea. If I see a ring glint in the light, my stomach lurches. People still ask me about it. Friends, reporters, curious strangers who piece together that I was the neighbor in the story. They always want to know one thing. How did you survive? The truth? I don't know. Maybe luck? Maybe timing? Maybe the sirens reached the house 1 minute earlier than they could have. Or maybe some sick, twisted part of Adrian wanted an audience. Wanted someone to know the truth about what he really was. All I know is that I got out. But part of me is still in that attic, kneeling on the floor, staring at that ring in the puddle of vomit, hearing his voice on the tape, and asking myself the same question over and over again. If it was her ring, then what had I just eaten? My name is Jessica Martinez, and I'm a 28-year-old ICU nurse at Mercy General Hospital. I'm telling you this story because I need you to understand that I'm not someone who scares easily. I've held the hands of dying patients. I've performed CPR on a teenager who'd been in a car accident. I've seen things that would give most people nightmares. But what happened to me on November 17th, 2024 was different. It was a Friday night, and my shift had run over by almost 2 hours. We'd had a multi-vehicle pileup come in around 9 p.m., and the ER had been chaos. By the time I'd finished my charting and handed off to the night shift, it was 11:43 p.m. I walked through the empty hospital corridors toward the staff parking garage, my feet aching in my sneakers. I'd been wearing the same pair of scrubs for 13 hours, and I could smell the mixture of antiseptic and sweat on my clothes. All I wanted was to get home, take a hot shower, and collapse into bed. But when I got to my parking spot on level B2, I remembered. My car was still in the shop. The check engine light had come on Monday, and the mechanic said it needed a new catalytic converter. They'd promised it would be ready by Friday, but when I'd called during my lunch break, they'd told me they were waiting on a part. Maybe Tuesday, they'd said. So there I stood in the fluorescent-lit parking garage, the hum of the ventilation system the only sound, pulling out my phone to request a ride. I opened the Ride Now app. I'd been using it for 3 years, ever since I moved to the city for this job. Usually pretty reliable, though the prices had gone up lately. Tonight was no exception. $34.50 for what should normally be an $18 trip. Surge pricing. I grimaced but pressed confirm. The app showed a car would arrive in 6 minutes. Driver, Marcus Webb. Vehicle, 2019 silver Toyota Camry. License plate, 8THP452. Rating, 4.97 stars, with 3,847 trips. I studied his profile photo while I waited. African-American man, maybe mid-40s, with a friendly smile and close-cropped hair going gray at the temples. He was wearing a blue polo shirt in the picture. The comments on his profile were typical. Very friendly. Clean car. Great conversation. One person had written, "Marcus knows all the best shortcuts. Got me to the airport 10 minutes early." That last comment made me smile. I appreciated efficient drivers. I walked toward the garage exit to street level, my footsteps echoing in the concrete space. As I passed the security camera near the stairwell, I noticed it was hanging at an odd angle, its usual blinking red light dark. I made a mental note to mention it to security, though I'd probably forget by Monday. The November air hit me as I emerged onto the street, cold and damp, with that smell of distant rain. A light fog was rolling in from the bay, the kind that made the streetlights look like they were glowing through gauze. My phone buzzed. Marcus has arrived. A silver Toyota Camry was idling at the curb, right where the app said it would be. The license plate matched, 8THP452. Through the windshield, I could see the driver, a black man wearing glasses and what looked like a dark jacket. I approached the car and opened the back passenger door. The interior light came on, and I saw him turn to look at me over his shoulder. "Jessica?" he asked. "That's me," I said, sliding into the back seat. The car was exceptionally clean, like immaculately clean. The seats looked freshly vacuumed, there wasn't a speck of dust on the dashboard, and the floor mats appeared brand new. A pine-scented air freshener hung from the rearview mirror, but underneath it I detected something else. A sharp chemical smell, like industrial cleaner. "How's your night going?" he asked as he pulled away from the curb. His voice was pleasant, with a slight southern accent I couldn't quite place. Georgia, maybe? Alabama? "Long," I said, settling back into the seat. I sent a quick text to my roommate, Amber. "In the ride, should be home in 20. "Hospital work?" he asked, glancing at my scrubs in the mirror. "Yeah, I see you, nurse. We had a crazy evening. Multiple trauma victims from a pile-up on the interstate." "That sounds intense," he said. "I really respect what you folks do. My sister's a nurse too, actually. Works in Atlanta." "Oh yeah? What kind of nursing?" "Pediatrics," he said. "She loves it. Says kids are more resilient than adults, bounce back faster." The conversation felt natural, easy. I relaxed a little, looking at my phone to check the route. We should be taking Madison Street to Highway 101 South, then exiting at Brookfield Avenue. Total time, 18 minutes. He turned onto Madison as expected, heading toward the freeway on-ramp. Traffic was light, just a few cars scattered here and there, some taxis, a couple of late-night buses. Normal for this time on a Friday. "You always work the late shift?" he asked. "Couple times a week," I said. "I actually prefer it. Quieter, usually. Well, except for tonight." "I bet. I usually drive nights myself. Better fares, less traffic. Though you get some interesting passengers at this hour," he chuckled. "Had a guy last week, completely drunk, insisted we stop at 3 different fast food places. Took 45 minutes for what should have been a 15-minute trip." I smiled. Did he tip well, at least? $5 on a $30 fare, Marcus said, shaking his head. "But hey, it's all part of the job." We merged onto Highway 101, and I watched the city lights blur past my window. The downtown skyline was still lit up, office buildings with their after-hours cleaning crews making geometric patterns of illuminated windows against the dark. A plane descended in the distance, heading for the airport north of the city. Everything felt normal, routine. Then Marcus changed lanes, moving from the middle lane toward the right. I assumed he was just positioning for our exit, which was coming up in about 3 miles. But instead of staying in the right lane, he took an exit I didn't recognize. Harwood Boulevard. I leaned forward slightly. "I think you might have taken the wrong exit." "Nah, there's construction up ahead on your route," he said casually. "It's been there for 2 weeks now. Adds like 15 minutes to the trip. This way is much faster. I take it all the time." I looked at my phone. The app still showed him on Highway 101, the GPS icon sliding along the blue route line. But that wasn't uncommon. GPS lagged sometimes, especially in areas with poor signal. "You sure?" I asked. The app didn't mention any construction. "Yeah, the apps are always behind on this stuff. Trust me, I do this route 5-6 times a night. I'll have you home quicker this way." Something in my stomach tightened. Not quite alarm, just a small sense of unease. But his explanation seemed reasonable. Rideshare drivers did know shortcuts that apps didn't account for, and he seemed so confident, so matter-of-fact about it. Still, I kept watching my phone as we drove down Harwood Boulevard. The street was darker than the freeway. Fewer lights, more industrial buildings, warehouses with loading docks, a closed auto repair shop, a storage facility with chain-link fencing. "Should be back on the main route in just a minute," Marcus said. But a minute passed, then 2, then 5. The buildings were getting more sparse now, with empty lots between them. The streetlights were farther apart, creating pools of darkness between each illuminated section. I hadn't seen another car in at least 3 minutes. I checked my phone again. We were definitely off route now, and the app showed it. The blue line and our actual location had diverged significantly. The arrival time had changed from 12:04 a.m. to recalculating. Marcus? I said, trying to keep my tone polite. I don't think this is the right way. The app is showing we're going in the wrong direction. Oh, the GPS is just confused. Happens all the time when you go off the main roads. We'll pop back onto Brookfield in just a couple minutes. There's a connector road up here. But something in his voice had changed. It was still friendly, still casual, but there was a firmness to it now, like he wasn't really open to discussion. I looked out the window more carefully now, trying to see if anything looked familiar. It didn't. To our right was a long chain-link fence with barbed wire on top, protecting what looked like an abandoned industrial complex. To our left, empty lots overgrown with dead grass and weeds, spotted with trash and rusted machinery. This wasn't a shortcut. This wasn't anywhere near my neighborhood. I really think we should turn around, I said, and I could hear my own voice getting tighter. This doesn't feel right. We can't turn around here, Marcus said, and his voice was still calm, still reasonable. There's nowhere to do it safely. These roads are too narrow. But don't worry, like I said, we're almost to the connector. I glanced at the driver's ID card displayed on the dashboard, required by the rideshare company. The photo showed Marcus Webb, 46 years old, with the same friendly smile from his profile picture. But now that I was really looking at it, something seemed off. The man in the photo had fuller cheeks, a slightly rounder face. The man driving had sharper features, more angular, and the ears were different. The Marcus in the photo had ears that stuck out slightly, while this driver's were flatter against his head. My heart started beating faster. I looked at my phone. No signal. How did I have no signal? I'd had full bars on the freeway. I need you to pull over right now, I said, not bothering to sound polite anymore. Right now, I want to get out. We can't stop here, Marcus said, and for the first time, his tone had shifted. Still calm, but with an edge to it. Something cold underneath the friendliness. Like I said, it's not safe. I tried the door handle. It didn't move. Child safety locks. The wave of panic that hit me was immediate and overwhelming. I yanked the handle again, harder. Nothing. I pressed the window button. The window didn't move. The controls are locked, the driver said, his voice now completely devoid of warmth. For safety reasons. Let me out of this car, I said, and I was proud that my voice came out strong despite the terror clawing at my chest. Let me out right now or I'm calling the police. You can try, he said, but as you've noticed, there's no signal out here. Tower's about 6 miles west. We're in what you might call a dead zone. That's actually why I like this area. Very private. He took a left turn onto an even smaller road, barely more than a dirt path with gravel. Tree branches scraped against the car's sides. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating nothing but trees and undergrowth. Who are you? I asked. My hand was shaking as I tried my phone again. No signal. I tried to dial 911 anyway. Call failed. Well, that's a complicated question, he said, philosophically speaking. You're not Marcus Webb. Very perceptive. No, I'm not Marcus Webb. Marcus Webb is a 46-year-old accountant from Sacramento who drives for Ride Now on weekends to supplement his income. He's probably home right now, watching TV with his wife. He has no idea that someone cloned his driver profile 3 weeks ago. "What do you want?" I asked, though I was afraid I already knew the answer. What do I want? He seemed to consider this as he drove deeper into the woods. I want a lot of things, Jessica. But right now, specifically, I want you to understand something. I want you to understand how perfectly the system is designed for someone like me. He glanced at me in the rearview mirror, and I could see his eyes clearly now. They were light blue, almost gray, and completely devoid of emotion, like looking at a shark. Do you know how many people use rideshare apps every day in this city? Thousands, tens of thousands. And do you know how the verification system works? It's a joke. You take a selfie, you upload some documents, and boom, you're approved. They run a background check, sure, but that only catches people who've already been caught. What about people like me? People who've never been caught. People who are very, very careful. The trees opened into a clearing, and I felt my stomach drop. In the headlights, I could see a small concrete building, maybe an old pump house or utility shed. It looked abandoned, with rust stains running down from the roof and weeds growing up around the foundation. But the metal door looked new, with a shiny padlock hanging from the handle. He pulled the car to a stop about 15 feet from the building and put it in park, but he left the engine running and he didn't turn off the headlights. Then he turned around in his seat to look at me directly for the first time. Up close, I could see I'd been right. This wasn't Marcus Webb. This man was younger, maybe late 30s, with pale skin and those unsettling gray-blue eyes. He had a thin scar running along his jawline that hadn't been visible in the dim light before. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, his voice eerily calm. "I'm going to open your door. You're going to step out. If you try to run, you won't get far, and you'll only make things harder on yourself. If you fight, same thing. Your best chance, your only chance, is to stay calm and do exactly what I say. Do you understand?" Every muscle in my body was screaming to do something, but what? I was trapped in a locked car with a stranger in the middle of nowhere with no cell signal. Even if I somehow got past him, where would I run? We were miles from anything. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, stalling for time, trying to think of any possible way out. He tilted his head, studying me like I was an interesting specimen. "Here's what's going to happen," he said, his voice eerily calm. "I'm going to open your door. You're going to step out. If you try to run, you won't get far, and you'll only make things harder on yourself. If you fight, same thing. Your best chance, your only chance, is to stay calm and do exactly what I say. Do you understand?" He tilted his head, studying me like I was an interesting specimen. "You want the honest answer? Because I can. Because the society we've built, with all its technology, all its supposed safety measures, has created the perfect hunting ground. Everyone trusts the app. Everyone thinks it's verified, it's tracked, it's safe. But it's not. It's just the illusion of safety, and I exploit that illusion." He reached into the center console between the front seats and pulled out a syringe filled with clear liquid. My breath caught in my throat. "This is ketamine," he said, holding it up so I could see it clearly. "Veterinary grade. It won't kill you, that would defeat the purpose. It'll just make you compliant, calm, manageable. You'll still be conscious, still able to walk and follow instructions, but you won't be able to fight effectively. Think of it as a mercy. "Please," I said, and I hated how small my voice sounded. "Please, I have a family. My parents, my little brother." "Everyone has a family," he interrupted, sounding almost bored. "That's not unique. That's not going to change anything." He turned back around and opened his door. The dome light came on, casting harsh shadows across the interior of the car. I watched in horror as he stepped out onto the gravel, taking the syringe with him. Through the window, I could see him walking around the front of the car in the headlight beams, moving with an unhurried, confident stride, like someone who'd done this before, many times before. My mind was racing. Think, Jessica, think. You're a nurse. You know human anatomy. You know vulnerabilities. You know how to handle violent patients. Wait. Violent patients? We had training for that. Yearly de-escalation courses, physical restraint techniques, where to position yourself, how to protect yourself. And I knew something else. Ketamine takes time to work when injected intramuscularly. Even IV, there's a window. If I could delay him injecting me, if I could create an opportunity. He reached my door. I heard the locks disengage with a soft click that sounded unnaturally loud in the quiet night. The door handle moved. This was it. This was my only chance. As the door swung open and he leaned in, reaching for me with the hand that held the syringe, I made my move. I'd been holding the shoulder strap of my seatbelt since he'd gotten out of the car, pulling out as much length as I could while keeping the buckle engaged. The moment he was close enough, I released the buckle and swung the belt outward with all my strength. The metal buckle caught him right in the face, not where I'd aimed for his eyes, but close enough. He stumbled backward with a shout of pain and surprise, dropping the syringe onto the gravel. I didn't think, I just moved. I launched myself out of the car, my feet hitting the ground, and I ran. Not toward the dirt road we'd come from, that was too obvious, too expected, but toward the tree line to the left, into the darkest part of the woods. Behind me, I heard him cursing, not shouting, but cursing in a low, angry voice that was somehow more frightening than if he'd screamed. Then I heard his footsteps crunching on the gravel, following. The woods were dense and dark, with only faint moonlight filtering through the canopy. Branches whipped at my face and caught at my scrubs. I could barely see where I was going, just kept pushing forward, away from the clearing, away from him. I could hear him behind me, not far enough behind. He was faster than me, and he knew these woods. I could tell by how confidently he was moving despite the darkness. My foot caught on something, a root or a fallen branch, and I went down hard, the impact knocking the wind out of me. Dead leaves and dirt filled my mouth. I scrambled to get up, but he was on me, his weight pressing me down into the forest floor. "You stupid bitch," he hissed in my ear, and his voice had lost all pretense of control now. It was pure rage. "You just made this so much worse for yourself. I was going to be quick. Now it's going to take hours." He had one hand tangled in my hair, yanking my head back. With his other hand, I could feel him reaching for something. Another syringe, maybe, or a weapon. My right hand was pinned under me, but my left was free. I clawed desperately at the ground, my fingers closing around a rock. It wasn't big, maybe the size of a tennis ball, but it was heavy and solid. I swung it backward over my shoulder, not sure where it would hit, just hoping for anything. It connected with something soft. His nose, maybe, or his mouth. He made a choking, gurgling sound, and his grip on my hair loosened just enough. I twisted my body violently, throwing him off balance, and swung the rock again. This time I could see where I was aiming, his temple. The rock connected with a sickening thud, and he rolled off me onto his side, dazed. I didn't wait to see if he'd get up. I scrambled to my feet and ran again, the rock still clutched in my fist, deeper into the woods. But I was disoriented now. Which direction was I going? Where was the clearing? Where was anything? Then I heard it, the sound of running water somewhere ahead. A stream or creek. I crashed through the undergrowth toward the sound, branches tearing at my clothes and skin. The ground sloped suddenly downward, and I half ran, half slid down a muddy embankment, grabbing at tree roots and branches to slow my descent. At the bottom was a creek, maybe 12 feet across, the water dark and moving fast over rocks. Behind me, I could hear him coming again, slower now, breathing hard, but still coming. He was saying something. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was conversational again, like he was explaining something to a child. That scared me more than the anger had. I splashed into the creek. The water was shockingly cold, instantly soaking through my sneakers and scrubs, coming up past my knees. The current was stronger than it looked, and the rocks underneath were slippery with algae. I nearly fell twice as I waded across, but I kept my balance and climbed up the opposite bank. At the top of the embankment, I found myself on what looked like an old logging road or fire access trail, two faint parallel ruts with grass and weeds growing between them. And to my right, maybe a mile away, I could see a faint orange glow against the low clouds. Light pollution. Civilization. I ran toward it, my wet clothes clinging to me, my body shaking from cold and adrenaline and shock. My lungs burned. My legs felt like they were made of lead, but I kept running. The sound of pursuit had faded. Either he'd lost me at the creek, or he'd given up, knowing I was getting close to help. But I didn't slow down to find out. I just kept running toward that orange glow. The logging road joined a paved two-lane highway after what felt like forever, but was probably only 10 minutes. And there, like the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen, was a 24-hour gas station, its fluorescent lights blazing against the darkness. I stumbled into the parking lot just as an elderly man in a Seahawks jacket was coming out with a fountain drink and a hot dog. He took one look at me, covered in mud and scratches and blood, soaking wet, shaking uncontrollably, and his eyes went wide. "Jesus Christ," he said, setting down his food and pulling out his phone. "What happened to you? Don't move, I'm calling 911. The words tumbled out of me in a rush. The fake driver profile, the kidnapping, the building in the woods, everything. Within 7 minutes, there were 3 patrol cars in the parking lot and an ambulance on the way. I gave the police everything I could remember. The name Marcus Webb on the profile, the license plate 8THP452, the description of the man who'd actually been driving, the location of the clearing with the shed, as best as I could describe it based on the roads we'd taken. They found the car at the scene about 40 minutes later, abandoned. The real license plate was underneath the fake one. The car had been stolen from a mall parking lot 3 days earlier. The interior had been wiped completely clean of fingerprints, but they found the syringe I'd made him drop, and the ketamine inside tested positive. The shed was worse. I didn't see it myself. The detectives wouldn't let me near it, but I heard about it later during the investigation. There were restraints bolted to the walls, chemical stains on the concrete floor, and evidence that it had been used before. Hair samples, trace DNA, scratches on the floor that suggested someone had tried desperately to escape. Those samples eventually matched 3 missing women from the past 14 months. All had disappeared after ordering late-night ride shares. All had seemingly vanished without a trace, their drivers showing normal GPS routes to their destinations. But they never found him. The man who'd called himself Marcus Webb, who'd used a cloned profile, who'd stolen a car and modified it with child locks and window controls. He'd vanished into the night. The real Marcus Webb, when police contacted him, was horrified. He'd reported suspicious activity on his account 3 weeks earlier, rides he hadn't completed showing up in his history, money being withdrawn from earnings that weren't his. But the rideshare company's support system was notoriously slow. They'd opened a ticket but hadn't acted on it. In the months after, there was a lawsuit. New safety protocols were implemented. Facial recognition verification before each ride, mandatory dash cams, emergency buttons that work on satellite signal, real-time monitoring of route deviations. The rideshare company settled with the families of the 3 victims for an undisclosed amount. But none of that brings them back. I still use rideshare sometimes, though not often. I check the license plate 3 times against the app. I verify the driver's face matches their photo, looking closely at the ears, the shape of the face, any distinguishing features. I share my trip with 4 different people. I sit in the back seat behind the driver so I can watch their hands. I keep my finger hovering over the emergency button. And I never, ever take a late-night ride alone anymore. But here's what really haunts me. Somewhere out there, he's still out there. Maybe he's using a different cloned profile now. Maybe he's moved to a different city, a different region. Maybe he's found a new abandoned building, a new stretch of road with no cell signal, a new hunting ground. And there's someone else out there right now, standing on a street corner at midnight, watching a silver car pull up, checking the license plate against their phone, thinking, it matches, it's safe, the app verified it. But they don't know what I know. They don't know how easy it is to fake, how perfectly the system is designed to be exploited by someone who's careful, someone who's patient, someone who understands that the technology people trust to keep them safe can become the very thing that delivers them into danger. I tried to get the police to release a sketch of the man, but without a name or fingerprints or any identifying information, there wasn't much they could do. He was just a ghost, a very dangerous ghost who knew exactly how to stay invisible. So I'm telling you this story now, sharing every detail I can remember, because you need to understand something. That little notification chime, that smiling profile picture, that 5-star rating, none of it guarantees you're safe. None of it means the person behind the wheel is who they claim to be. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. If the driver takes an unexpected turn, speak up immediately. If they won't pull over when you ask, call 911 even if you think you don't have signal. Emergency calls can sometimes connect on different frequencies. And if the doors won't open, break a window if you have to. Better to pay for damages than to end up in a shed in the woods. Because I got lucky. I fought back at exactly the right moment. I found that creek. I stumbled onto that highway. The 3 women whose DNA they found in that shed weren't so lucky. And whoever gets into his car next might not be either. My name is Jessica Martinez. I'm 28 years old. I'm an ICU nurse at Mercy General Hospital. And I'm one of the lucky ones.
Usually late, when conversation thins out and the room gets quieter than it should. That's when the memory slips in. Not violently, not suddenly. It arrives the way cold does, slowly enough that you don't notice until you're already uncomfortable. This happened in western Pennsylvania, late October, the kind of time of year where the trees are half dead and the air smells faintly metallic, like rust and wet leaves. Back then, I was doing contract work that kept me driving between small towns most people pass through without ever stopping. Places that shut down early, places where night feels longer. Night driving had become routine, familiar, almost comforting. Therefore, when I left Altoona just before 10 p.m., I wasn't tense. I wasn't watching shadows. I wasn't expecting anything. I remember standing outside my car for a moment before leaving. The parking lights buzzed faintly. Somewhere far off, a truck engine idled. Other than that, nothing. No wind, no insects, just a stillness that felt pressed flat, like the world had already gone to sleep. I checked my phone. 3 hours home. Manageable. I told myself I wouldn't stop, just drive straight through and be done with it. The first hour blurred together the way night driving always does. Highways unspooling under the headlights, reflective signs flashing past and vanishing. The radio murmuring softly, therefore the silence never quite settled in. Somewhere after 11 p.m., the GPS spoke up. Faster route available. I didn't hesitate. I tapped accept and followed the exit ramp down off the highway. That's when things began to narrow. Not sharply, gradually. The road lost its divider. The shoulder thinned until it was barely there. Trees leaned closer, their branches tangled together overhead. Therefore, the headlights felt weaker, like they were being absorbed instead of reflected. I remember thinking how dark the woods looked. Not dramatic dark, not horror movie dark, just dense, layered, the kind of darkness that feels old. 10 minutes later, my phone lost service. I noticed, but therefore I didn't care. That happened all the time out there. Still, I checked the time. 11:14 p.m. The radio crackled. At first, it was subtle, just a thread of static under the voice. I adjusted the dial. The static grew louder. The voice dissolved. I changed stations. Every channel sounded wrong. Not dead, not quiet, just busy, like something was moving underneath the noise. I turned the radio off. The silence that followed felt immediate and heavy, like the inside of a sealed room. A few minutes later, my headlights caught something reflective on the shoulder. A bus stop sign. It stood alone, a single metal pole, a blank rectangle. No bench, no shelter, no sidewalk leading to it, just trees packed tightly behind it, their trunks pale and vertical, like they'd been placed there intentionally. I slowed down without realizing it. No one was there. Still, it bothered me more than it should have. A bus stop suggests waiting. It suggests routine. Someone standing there, checking the time, shifting their weight. But there was nothing around it that supported that idea. No houses, no roads branching off, no indication anyone had ever approached it on foot. I told myself it was abandoned, but therefore I kept thinking about it. 5 minutes later, I passed another one. Same height, same blank sign, same distance from the road. My chest tightened. I started noticing other things after that. How I hadn't seen another car in a long time. How the forest never broke, never opened into clearings or driveways. How the road felt less like it was going somewhere and more like it was keeping me inside it. I checked the GPS again. The blue line still stretched forward, confident, unbothered. No warning, no recalculation. I glanced at the clock. 11:17 p.m. That didn't feel right. I watched it for a moment. The seconds moved, but slowly, heavily, like they were being dragged. That's when I saw the man. He stood on the shoulder, several feet back from the road, facing the trees. Dark hoodie, jeans, no visible bag, no jacket. He wasn't walking, he wasn't pacing, he wasn't even swaying. He was just there. I eased off the gas. My headlights washed over his back. Therefore I glanced sideways as I passed him, expecting something, anything that would confirm he was real. He didn't turn, didn't react, didn't acknowledge the car at all. The moment he slipped out of view, a wave of dread rolled through me so sudden it made my hands go cold. I checked the rearview mirror. The shoulder was empty. No movement, no figure stepping into the woods. Gone. I told myself he'd stepped back, that the angle was wrong, that exhaustion was messing with my depth perception. But therefore my breathing didn't slow. Another bus stop passed, then another. They were closer together now, too evenly spaced, identical, like they weren't meant for people, but for counting something. The GPS went silent. No voice, no alerts. The road straightened, completely. No curves, no bends. Just a long, unnatural stretch cutting forward through terrain that should have forced it to twist. My speed dropped without me noticing. 35, 30. It felt like driving into a tunnel made of trees. Headlights appeared behind me. Relief hit hard and fast. Another car meant proof that this was real, that this road existed. The headlights stayed back, matching my speed. They didn't pass, didn't fall behind. They just followed. After a while, I noticed something wrong with them. They didn't move. No bounce, no sway, no subtle shift as the road dipped slightly. Just two steady points of light, fixed in place, like they were painted onto the darkness. I slowed down. They slowed too. I drifted toward the shoulder. They stayed perfectly centered. That's when the radio turned on. Static filled the car, but beneath it a voice, low, calm, intimate, like someone speaking softly from very close by. I couldn't understand the words. I didn't want to. My hand hovered over the power button. Therefore, I didn't touch it. The headlights behind me vanished instantly. At the same moment, the radio clicked off. I didn't think. I turned the wheel and made a careful U-turn, half expecting the road to resist me somehow. It didn't. I drove back the way I came. The bus stops were gone, all of them. The road curved again. Trees pulled back. An intersection appeared where there hadn't been one before. My phone buzzed as service returned. The GPS chirped cheerfully, recalculating like nothing had happened. I didn't stop driving until I reached a gas station just after midnight, every light blazing like it was trying to push the dark away. I sat there for a long time, engine running, staring at my reflection. The clerk asked if I was okay. I said I took a wrong turn. He nodded slowly and said, "Yeah, people do." I've checked maps since, old transit routes, archived bus lines. There are no bus stops out there, no road like that. But sometimes, late at night, I think about that man standing on the shoulder, how still he was, how he didn't turn his head, and I wonder if he was waiting, not for a ride, but for something that still comes. Some families pass down recipes. Some pass down heirlooms. Mine pass down stories. My grandfather spent 27 years as a detective in Hawthorne, Illinois, a quiet manufacturing town that pretended nothing bad ever happened. When I was a kid, his stories were watered down, crooks caught, mysteries solved, the good guys always winning. But as I got older, the tone changed. He stopped smiling when he talked, stopped joking, started pausing mid-sentence like he'd accidentally stepped too close to something he didn't want to remember. 2 years ago, when the doctors told him his body was giving up piece by piece, he told me there were cases he'd kept filed away deep, ones that never made sense, ones that didn't fit into how the world is supposed to work. He called them the impossible ones. The last one he told me, he said, that was the worst, not because it was the most violent, but therefore because it never stopped happening. It was early spring, late March, still cold enough that the mornings bit at your skin. A neighbor on Cedar Lane stepped out around 6 a.m. to grab her newspaper and noticed the Niebels' front door standing wide open. That alone was strange. The Niebels were neat people, careful, quiet, the kind of family you forget lives next door. She walked up, called out, and that's when she saw Jennifer Niebel lying on the kitchen floor. No blood, no mess, no sign of panic. She looked like someone who just shut down. When my grandfather and Olson arrived, the house felt wrong immediately. Not chaotic, too calm, furniture untouched, coffee cups still on the counter, Katie's little shoes lined up by the door. Jennifer was on her back, partly under the table, hair still perfect, no bruises, no wounds. Autopsy later said she was healthy in every measurable way. Her body didn't fail. Life simply left it. Benjamin and their 6-year-old daughter Katie were missing. Naturally, everyone thought Benjamin did it. But therefore, both cars were still in the garage. No neighbors saw them leave. No one heard shouting. 2 people had been on their porches since before sunrise and swore nothing passed by. The house was searched inch by inch. Basement, closets, crawl spaces, attic. Nothing. Benjamin's job complicated everything. He worked as a supervisor at a lumber yard off Route 41, and co-workers confirmed he showed up just before 5 a.m. He was building something strange in his office, a narrow wooden crate, tall and thin, like a rifle case. When asked, he smiled and said it was for the house. He never finished it. At 6:15, he told another supervisor he was heading to the bathroom. He never came back. Hours later, my grandfather realized he'd left his notebook at the Nabel house. When they returned, the coroner was loading Jennifer's body into the van. That's when the smell hit them. Not a fresh death, not even a day-old one. It was the smell of rot, deep, soaked in, ancient, the kind that sticks to walls, the kind you don't forget. And it had just started. Everyone there swore the smell wasn't present minutes earlier. It led upward, to the attic, the same attic my grandfather had personally checked 5 times already. But there, for now, there was something new. A crate, standing upright, leaking blood. When they pried it open, Benjamin fell out, or what was left of him. He'd been crushed, folded into dimensions that shouldn't have been possible. Bones shattered, organs flattened, skin stretched and discolored like a body dead for 2 weeks, and his eyes were gone. That's when they heard Katie, a little girl's voice. "Help me!" Every single person heard it, but everyone heard it coming from somewhere else. The walls, the cabinets, the refrigerator, beneath cars outside, inside trees, from above the attic rafters. My grandfather heard it directly above his head. It lasted less than 2 minutes, and then it stopped. Weeks passed. Jennifer was buried. Benjamin was cremated. But therefore, Benjamin's urn vanished from the cemetery. 6 months later, a groundskeeper found Jennifer's grave disturbed. Her body had been dug up and posed upright like she was resting. In her hands was Benjamin's urn, wrapped in his skin, perfectly preserved. Inside the ashes were 3 eyeballs. Only one belonged to Benjamin. Years later, the voice never stopped. Sometimes my grandfather heard it from the bathroom, sometimes from downstairs, sometimes coming from his wife while she slept. And on May 12, 2007, he saw Katie Nebel, standing outside a Walgreens near their old house, still 6 years old, still crying, still asking for help. She vanished mid-step. An hour later, Olson called him after 5 years of silence. He'd seen Katie, too, on a bus stop bench on the opposite side of the country. Olson killed himself the next day. My grandfather stopped talking after that. Said once he told it, it was done. But sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear something too. Not words, just breathing, like someone very small, standing just out of sight.